Well, good day to everyone. My name is Derek Melber, and I will be your host for today, as well as your presenter. And we here at Manage Engine, the Active Directory Solutions team, just want to thank everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend some time with us talking about Active Directory alerting. We spend quite a bit of time on the AD team trying to come up with presentations and solutions that really meet the majority of administrators. And I think today is certainly one of those presentations that we've worked diligently at, trying to come up with different things that administrators struggle with, whether it be on a daily basis or even possibly a weekly basis. And what we want to do is expose you to some things that are definitely possible and easy, so that you can get a better handle on your Active Directory configuration changes. Some logistics for today. This is being recorded, so please, if you want a link to the recording, check your email in the next couple of days. You should be receiving that. Second of all, I do have some team members behind me answering questions. So if you have any questions as we go through, please use your GoToWebinar little panel, and there should be a question area where you can ask your questions. So please do that, and they will answer questions as we work through. If for some reason we don't get to your question because we're running out of time, we will get to you through email. So keep an eye out for that too. Just a couple of more things before we get started on the material. A little bit of information about me. My name is Derek Melber, and I am the technical evangelist for the AD Solutions team, which really means that I get to tour the world talking with administrators, organizations, hearing issues, trying to solve problems for organizations around the world. This year alone, I think I've been to about 12 countries. You can see some of those listed on the slide there as part of our world tour. This is our third year of our world tour, and we are only just halfway done for the year. So I anticipate getting to about 18 to 20 countries this year. Last year I went to 25 countries and was able to meet just some amazing administrators, and met some administrators that taught me some things, and hopefully I was able to help them get solutions. So please utilize me as a resource. I have been an MVP 15 times, and I know other people that know more than me. So use me as a resource on anything AD, group policy, security, and the like, and we'll try to get you any solution that we can. I also want to point you to some resources. Of course, there's my email. That's very important. Please email me with any questions. Second of all, I want to point you to our website. Our website is full of some great information that's absolutely free and that's constantly updated. First of all, if you go to support and go to blogs, and then come over here to the Active Directory section, you will see that we have some recent Active Directory blogs. We try to blog every single week. And really the whole idea of the blog is to spend less than 5 minutes of your time and get you a solution that is something that may be nagging you or you didn't think of, or that's easy to implement. So this is a great way for you to get nuggets of information in a very, very easy way. The second resource I want to point you to is actually also available from our main landing page, manageengine.com. And if you go to products, and in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see security hardening. Microsoft, about 3 years ago, implemented a technology called JIT and GIA. And JIT and GIA, just-in-time and just-enough access, are still Microsoft's flagship security technology for securing Active Directory privileges. We, as a conglomerate here at AD Solutions team, felt that maybe the technology wasn't nearly where it needed to be, but still we wanted to address the idea of privileged access. So what we did is we built this website and also organized for you the different areas around security, especially those that have privileges, where you need to go in and shore them up and clean them up and make sure that you know what's there in Active Directory. So this really is dedicated to you. If you click on any of these links, you'll see quite a few blogs that help you get to the point where you're going to be secure in those areas. So please come take a look at that. It's a great resource for you, and all this, again, is absolutely free to you. So let's just jump right into the material. And let me give you a background for what we're going to talk about today. As an administrator, myself and dealing with administrators around the world, I find that there are certain things that are paramount. And what I mean by that is there are certain configurations that need to be in place. There are certain things that need to be in order. Otherwise, things go wrong. Now, there's a variety of different things that I can think of. And actually, this list is my top 10. And what I find is as I go around the world asking administrators questions and receiving questions for them, there's a pattern. And the pattern are all of these key factors, these key configurations and settings that if they aren't in place, bad things happen. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take these areas and give you a solution so that you could maintain and monitor these areas to where they're no longer an issue, and you have 100% confidence that those areas are correct. Now, if we were to try to use Microsoft technology for some of these things, right? So I'm going to come in here and to my Active Directory environment, and let's just take privileged groups. So I'm going to come down here to my schema admins. Let's go to enterprise admins. Okay, let's go right for the top. So my enterprise admins group, sure, it sits here, and I could click on here, and I could go to the members, and I could see all the members. But the issue with configurations in Active Directory is the fact that you may not be the only administrator that can make modifications. So if you have administrators in your organization that are making modifications that you aren't aware of, how are you going to engage that? How are you going to ensure that those settings are known to you? How are you going to ensure that they're correct? So this whole idea of making sure you know what's in place is vital. Now, it may not only be, let's say, for example, configurations. It might actually be access. So here I have some executives, and let's take Bill, for example. What if Bill, the CEO of the organization, on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and he has an 8:15 meeting, gets his account locked out? Well, that's not a pleasant feeling for Bill. And usually what Bill's going to do is he's going to call down to IT, kind of causing an issue that my account's locked out, I need it unlocked immediately, blah, blah, blah. How are you made aware that Bill's account is locked out? Other than Bill calling you or Bill's assistant calling you, how do you know that? Well, of course, these things, meaning changes or triggers or something like this, are available to be configured in Active Directory so you can track them. And you can do that using group policy. So if I go in here to group policy and I go to a GPO where I have my configuration set, I can come in here to my audit policy and show you that I'm tracking logon events, which would be failed as well as possible, good logons, account management for users, groups, GPOs, directory service access. I mean, I'm tracking nearly everything on my domain controller. Now, this tracking of behavior ends up inside of your event viewer on that domain controller in the security log. So here you see I have 140,000 events, and all of the things that I'm talking about, really everything on my list, at some point goes through this log. Now, if you wanted to possibly just run reports, I want to run a report of every time Bill has locked himself out. Well, first of all, you're going to notice there is no report generation. Yes, I can filter, but you're going to notice that you can't filter down to the user, right? This isn't content, right? This doesn't give you the ability to search the content to look for Bill. This is totally different. So all you can do is search down to the ID level, the event ID level. And really there's no positive way to communicate with you out of the event viewer. Yes, I do have the ability to attach a task. So let's say, for example, that you want to associate a task with group changes. So if the enterprise admins group changes, you get an email. Well, certainly you can send an email when a group changes, but you can't get down to just the enterprise admins. If you have 5,000 groups, anytime any of those group changes membership, you're going to get an email. So yes, we have part of the solution that Microsoft gives us so that we can basically track and alert on these changes, but it doesn't go all the way. And where it does kind of give us a solution for alerting, it doesn't give us the granularity that we need. So what I want to do is I want to give you insight into all of these areas so that you can see firsthand how these can impact you and your environment. Let's just take the first one, for example. A C-level person is locked out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here to my Windows 7 machine. This is Bill's machine. And I am going to log on, or try to log on, as Bill. So Bill puts in his username, puts in his password, says, sorry, it's wrong. Puts in another one. And unfortunately, Bill's account is locked out. Now, if I go over here to Active Directory, I would have to constantly be looking to see when accounts are locked out, if they're locked out. But the whole benefit of using a tool is the fact that you can get information out of the log and you can report on it. So what I can do is I can actually have alerts tell me when an account has been locked out. So you see here in real time, I have alerts that are associated with certain behaviors in Active Directory that I'm notified of. Now, look at this. This says Bill has been locked out. And if you come over here, you see details about the time, what happened. You even see the computer where Bill was working on. So I have the details that I need. Now, how does this work? What's the foundation? Well, I want you to think of it this way. It all starts with the log. So what we need to do with the log is parse the log so that we can focus on the actions that we need. So what we do in AD Audit Plus is, first of all, we allow you to have reports. Now, these reports allow you to focus on event IDs as well as details about what's in the event. So, for example, executive lockout is focusing on the execs group. Now, if I go back to Active Directory, that's this group right here. So anyone that has membership in this group, Tom and Bill, are both going to be monitored when their account is locked. Now, since I have a report, when an entry enters the report, I can also associate an alert to that entry into the report. And how I do that is I simply come up here and give the alert a name, give it a level, and then say, all right, if anything shows up in this report, I want you to send an alert. Now, by default, the alert goes to the home screen on AD Audit Plus, but notice here I can also send out email notifications to whoever I want. So the benefit of the tool is, first, I have reports. And my reports give me the history of things that are going on over time. I could look at the last 6 months, for example. So now I see the patterns. I can give reports to auditors. I can give reports to security professionals. And the most important thing is the alert is for you, the administrator. You need to know when these things are happening. You need to know what is happening inside of Active Directory. Because without a tool like this, and if you are only using the event viewer, you're really going to be hard pressed to try to find the information that you need. So the idea is that we can build reports based on logs. And then the reports that are based on logs allow me to run alerts on them. Because when something would show up on the report, I'm just going to be told, hey, it's there. Okay? Now, the first report and alert that I showed you was a custom report and alert. Obviously, I don't know who your execs are. You may not even have an execs group. So this right here, this report that I showed you is a custom report. Now, in a minute, I'm going to show you how to make a custom report and what they look like. We have, out of the box, you'll see over on the left-hand side, over 120 canned reports, out of the box default reports. So you can take these and modify them. You can also just create completely custom reports. It's up to you. The idea is if you have to track something, you can do it. Now let's move on to the second idea. Simple user being created, right? Now, a lot of times as I'm around the world, I get your attention live for a half day, maybe even 2 days. For most admins, that's great to get away from work, but most admins hate going back to work because there's always some kind of a fire that you have to put out. So if we just take users and extrapolate it, you want to know when a user is created. You want to know when it's manually created. You want to know when it's automatically created. You don't care. You just want to know when a user is created. Now, if I go back to Active Directory here, and I go to Active Directory users and computers, I mean, I can select any OU. I can select an OU down here that's a nested OU, and I can create users all the time. But how do I know the user is created? Well, the idea is it doesn't matter where the user is created, right? If I come in here and I create a new user, let's create my user Francis here, right? If someone else had created that user and I'm here in Active Directory, how do I know that user was created? Well, you're really not going to know. You could scour through the log. You could actually send yourself an email, but it's not going to be the detail that you want. And also I want it real time. So why not have the ability to have basically an alert emailed to you saying, hey, a user was created. And if I click on that, it's going to give me the details that I need about that user. I can then go into other reports and I can actually see over time when users are created. So here I can see all the users that were created. I can click on those users, and then I can ensure that the user is in correct information, right? Because one of the things that we need to do as administrators is to make sure that when objects are created, they have the correct configurations. Most of us have some type of an application, a database or something that's querying through LDAP, Active Directory. And those LDAP attributes that they're querying have to be configured. Otherwise, those objects won't be returned. Or we could get false positives because it's querying, but it's looking for it not being it being configured, and I get results back when I shouldn't get that user back. So again, the whole benefit is when things are happening in Active Directory that are hard to recognize on a normal basis, we want to be notified when these types of things happen. We want to track and notify. For example, many of you have to deal with auditors. I mean, wouldn't it be great to be able to go in and say, all right, over the last 6 months, these are the users that were created. And these are who created the users, where they were created, the dates they were created. I mean, this is some powerful stuff. Now, if you get a report like this, all you have to do is export it as a particular format. For your auditors, probably a PDF or even a CSV would be wonderful. Now they can parse the information. So the ease of this information becomes very powerful. What about shares, right? We've talked about failed logons getting to account lockouts. We've talked about object creation. Well, what about your servers? I mean, let's say, for example, that someone decides on your #1 financial server containing all your financial data that they're just going to create a share. How are you going to know that? I guarantee you none of you on this webinar wants that, but you want to know when that happens. So how are you going to get notified? Well, let's say, for example, that this Windows 7 machine, just play along, is my server, right? It doesn't matter. It's just a non-domain controller. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to log on as an admin on this machine. Now, as an admin on this machine, that means that I can go somewhere and I can, let's say, here, I can go to properties, sharing, and I could share this folder out, right? So I'm going to add finance data. Okay, click, okay, close. Now, anyone that has a computer on the network can simply go to Windows 7 and they can see that share. Now, of course, I can hide it. I can do some other things. But the point is, you, the administrator of your network, you need to be aware, hey, that was shared. Now, that share will not show up in this event log. That share only shows up in the event log on the machine where the share was created. And I have to have auditing turned on. Now, the good part is turning on auditing is easy because I can use group policy to do that. Now, the idea is that a tool like AD Audit Plus can do server audits, and I can actually look at network share of when they're added. Now, the idea is that I bring in my servers, my workstations, and here you can see that I have a fetch interval, and I can go in and I can say, all right, I want to know when XYZ is occurring. So that means if something is added, I want to have the information available to me. Now, this should show up here soon. And also I have a, right here, right? Derek created a folder under test, and I'm going to be able to get an alert that that was sent. Because what I have here is I have the ability to send alerts when shares are created. Again, this is custom, but it's super easy because all I'm doing is I'm focusing on the fact that a share was added in a report. So the power of the tool can actually expose information to you that's nearly impossible for you to see without the tool. So I don't have to go and say, all right, I want to know if XYZ share is created. You just say, I want to know if any share is created on that server. And you have a list of servers that you care about. And you want to make sure that the entry points to those servers are maintained. That's where the tool comes in, where we can show you where things are being created or not. Number 4, password policy changes. Now, this gets into the nitty-gritty, right? This is in a group policy object, or it's in a fine-grained password policy. There are 2 ways to set password policies for your domain users. And it is nearly impossible to know when a change occurs. But watch this. If I go in to group policy, right? Well, first of all, let's take a step back and let me show you how to correctly determine what you have for your password policy. There is a tool called SecPol, SecPol.msc, and if you run this, it'll tell you exactly what your password policy is. Now, you can see mine isn't very good, and that's for a reason because I show this demo, right? But if you want to know which GPO is setting your password policy, well, that's when you go back to group policy management. You go to your group policy results, and you could do a group policy results wizard, right? This computer, doesn't matter the user. And then I can go to my settings, security settings, password policy, and I can see that this mystery GPO is setting most of my settings. So if I go to the mystery GPO and I modify the password policy, right? So if I come in here and I modify the password policy, and let's say the minimum password length now is going to be 1, right? I'm just going to change it. Doesn't matter what I change. It's the fact that the password policy is changing. How are you going to know that that change occurred? I mean, unless you have a tool which is helping you generate reports, right? So if I have reports and I come down here to advanced GPO reports, password policy changes, right? I have to know that something is there to be changed. So this is allowing me to see the details on what's changing. Now, notice, not everything is real time. Group policy is not real time in AD Audit Plus. The files in AD Audit Plus aren't real time. If you use the file Audit Plus that we have, that is real time. But not everything is real time. But the whole idea is I want to be able to see details. Now, what you're going to see is that very quickly here, this is going to show up in my reports. It's going to show up that that group policy changed, okay? And when that shows up, you want to receive an email that showed up. Okay. Now, if we look at our reports of group policy, you'll also notice that I have a variety of other settings that I can look at. The power is in the ability to alert when certain things change. And you'll notice here that I have a domain password policy alert. I also have a fine-grained password policy. So if the fine-grained password policies change at any time, and I can look over the last whatever days, right? So I can go in here and I can change my view. So let's say that I want to look over the last 6 months to see if a fine-grained password policy changed. And in this case, it hasn't. But isn't that great information? So the power of the tool is that you want to have reports that show you, there's mystery right there, when things change. You want to know the old value and the new value, and you want to receive alerts that these things changed. Okay? So what you need is a tool that can engage at this level. And again, I have the ability to look at fine-grained password policies. Now, fine-grained password policies are not configured inside of group policy. If you have an older OS, right, not a 2012 R2 new console, you're going to be using add-cedit. If you have the new console, yes, you do have a nice GUI environment to modify fine-grained password policies. But if you have an older one, like this is a 2008 R2 domain controller, I'm going to have to go to add-cedit. And if I come into add-cedit and I go down to the system area and I go to my password settings container, anything that I change here, or if I decide to create a new password, fine-grained password policy, how am I going to know that this is changing? This is actually an object inside of Active Directory, right? It's an MSDS password settings object under that class. How am I going to know that? Well, again, this change with the right auditing shows up in your event log. But the event log doesn't have the ability to give you the details that you need. So you need a tool that gives you the option so you can set alerts for things that are changing, such as the fine-grained password policies being changed. So this is a very powerful way for you to get information out of Active Directory in areas that I call are almost impossible to see without a tool like this. Now, certainly tracking privileged access is something we all need. I mean, every single day, go to your favorite search engine, go to your favorite newspaper. Someone else has been attacked, breached because of incorrect privileges. We got to start looking at privileged access. So first of all, let me help you break it down. Privileged access related to groups is one of 3 categories for the most part, right? If we jump back into Active Directory, right? If I go to Active Directory users and computers, first we have groups such as enterprise admins, schema admins, domain admins. These are built-in groups. That's your first category. Secondly, you might have some kind of a SQL or Exchange admin groups. So when you install an application or service, those groups are put into Active Directory. Third, you're going to have other types of groups that you create manually, right? So here's my executives, here's IT, right? So I have some different managers and whatnot that have privileges. These are custom groups. So first of all, you need to find and document all of your groups. Then you want to be able to track and get real-time alerts when anyone is added or removed from those groups. So if someone were to come into your enterprise admin group, and let's say, for example, that someone was added to that group, how do you know? Until you run a report manually, right? Until you come in here and do a screenshot of this, how do you know? Well, I know because I am tracking that and I get a real-time alert. Again, some alerts like my domain policy change wasn't real-time. This one's real-time. I get information immediately about that. And every single alert can have an email. So I can get an email in real time when something changes. This is the power of being able to get information out of the log, put it in a database, and then use good queries on the database down to the level of detail. I mean, this is telling me exactly who was added to what particular group, and it tells me all the information that I need, okay? So now I can take action on that. But without that real-time alert, how are you going to take action? Well, you can't. Service accounts, right? My last webinar was for the UK. Now, us in the United States, we've been dealing with compliance regulations for many, many years. The UK and Europe, they're just now getting to GDPR. And next May, GDPR is going to hit them hard. And they're going to be hitting the same pains that we felt for years. But we as admins around Active Directory need to know when service accounts change. We need to know it for us to make sure things are maintained, and we need to be able to generate reports for auditors. So what I have done is I have created a report that tells me if any of my service accounts are modified. Over the last 30 days, these are all the service accounts that have been modified, and tells me exactly why they were modified. Now, this is great to be able to export this and give it to some auditor. But you need alerts. You need alerts so that you know when a service account is modified. Because if someone else in your environment goes to one of your service accounts and modifies it to where it breaks that account, you're going to be receiving a phone call in the next 5 to 30 minutes from a user. But wouldn't it be better for you to receive an email telling you that that service account was modified so you can take immediate action? Now, I haven't said it to this point. I'm going to say it a couple more times. A tool like this will change the way you administer Active Directory, because you now have a tool that's telling you what's going on things you can't see. You've wanted this for years. I know you have. You asked me questions about it. I've been on your side. I wanted something like this. But until now, the tools really, they weren't very good. But this tool is so simple. You can download AD Audit Plus, configure it, and start getting emails within about 15 minutes. That's how simple it is. You have 120 canned reports. Take the reports, and you can customize them, right? Obviously, service accounts was custom. How did I do this? Well, I went to configuration. A service account is a user, so I went to user modification. And I clicked on new report profile. Now, the end result is this right here. I simply gave it a name, and then I said, all right, it's a user modification. And what changes do I want to monitor? These are all those changes. Click, click, click. And then I add in all my service accounts, and I'm done. That's how I created the report. It cannot be easier. It can't be easier. For my group modification, right? When I had it in my custom groups, this modified admin groups is already a default report. I simply went in and I added in with this plus sign my other groups that I wanted to track. That's it. It's that simple. The tool is really simple to use. The tool is really simple to customize. Administrator logon, right? This is one of my favorite new tips, right? It's so simple, but people love it. Let me show you what I've done, and then I'll show you what I'm monitoring. Inside of Active Directory, I have renamed administrator. I've renamed it to James Bond. Now, I renamed it to James Bond. Let me prove it to you. I'm going to come into my attribute editor, and I'm going to show you what the SID is. You can see right here the SID is 500, so you can clearly see that I have renamed administrator to James Bond. Then I created a new administrator account. This administrator account has membership and no group except for domain users. So this has no privileges. This has all the privileges. Now what I did is I went into the tool that I can track and alert, And I have created a report so that I can see if any of those 2 accounts are modified in any way. Then I can show a listing to my auditor of all the changes that have occurred to either one of those. I can also get an alert if either one of those accounts is modified. See right here, I can get an alert. Now what I can do is I can actually set up a custom alert such that if the user fails to log on, right? And I can go into my alert and set up what's called a threshold, right? So the threshold is going to be basically if someone fails to log on X number of times in a time period, that's when I get the alert. I don't want to get an alert for one attempt. I want to get an alert if only a certain threshold is met. So you can now throw in thresholds to all these configurations. That way you're not getting false positives for certain things. Now, obviously, account lockout, if it's locked out, it's locked out. But administrator logon, 1 failure, maybe it's just an anomaly. 2, I know something's up. Someone's trying to hack in. So now we can get down to the details that we need. We can get emails on attacks before the attack happens. We can get emails on modifications to security before someone exploits that security. That's the power of the tool. GPO modifications. As I mentioned earlier with the password changes, right? I can come in here and I can look at a variety of different GPO management reports. All of these are built in. I didn't create any of these. Created, modified, but I also can look at details, right? I can look at advanced configurations of group policy. I can look at account lockout, password policy, user configuration, computer configuration, user rights, all these different areas. So that when that changes, I get an alert. I can go look at all the changes that have occurred and the details. It's extremely powerful. I'm telling you, something like this will change the way you administer Active Directory. Okay? Now, one last one, which is probably one of the most difficult areas in Active Directory to see, is access control list of Active Directory. This is related to delegation. If someone goes into your Active Directory infrastructure and they either right-click and run the delegate control wizard, or they go into security and modify your access control list, how are you going to know that? How are you going to know if someone comes in here and they decide to add a new property to a user or a group on a permission on an OU in Active Directory? It's almost impossible to see. And I find, and I've done many audits over my career, I find this is one area that is usually misconfigured, and administrators don't know it. I don't want you to look at reports. What I want you to do is I want you to be able to see that an OU was modified, and I want you to see the details about what was modified on that OU. This is the power. Look at right here, new value. I can see the details, okay? I can see the details on what's happening inside of Active Directory. I can receive email alerts in real time for most of these settings. So what are we doing here? What we're doing is we're taking advantage of this log, putting it into a database in AD Audit Plus, creating reports. The reports then are associated with alerts. The alerts allow me to see what is happening inside of Active Directory. Okay? So now I have everything that I need. I can get a list of all of my alerts. I can see what is happening inside of Active Directory over time, in real time. It'll change the way that you administer Active Directory. So here's my challenge to you, okay? We're beginning of the summer. I know you have a little bit of time. Take it upon yourself. I'm your advocate. I'm your Active Directory MVP advocate. I'm looking out for your behalf. please, if you don't have AD Auto Plus, go download it, install it, test it. Install it on a VM. That way you can blow it away if you want. Just spin it up on a VM. It has its own database that comes along with it. Configure DCs, configure audit policy, and see how fast this thing works. It is absolutely extraordinary what you can do. I know that every single one of you on this webinar needs to and wants to get email alerts when certain things happen in Active Directory. This can do it for you in 30-minute configuration. I'm telling you. It's that simple. Okay? Email me with your results. If you have any questions, email me with your questions. If you can't get a hold of me, which is usually pretty rare, please get a hold of someone else on the AD team. It is our mission to help you. I really hope that our time together, you got some information that's going to be valuable to you. You got some ideas that can help you make your environment more secure and allow you to see things that are happening. I know your time is valuable, so I don't see any more questions that are popping up. If you have any questions, that's my email address. I'm going to let you get back to your day. Me, Derek Melber, everyone that I work with on the AD team wants to thank you for your time. Thank you so much. Hopefully I see you live. We actually do have a user conference coming up in New York in September. Please keep an eye out for it. I'd love to shake your hand, meet you, talk a little bit of Active Directory with you. But if I can't see you at that event, hopefully another event soon, okay? So for Derek Melber and the rest of the AD Solutions team, thank you for your time. And until I see you again, have a great rest of your day.